Hey guys, this is a step-by-step video on how to create your one-point perspective bedroom. You can follow along and of course just stop the video, pause it if you need a little more time. So a couple things to remember. We are going to need to use our ruler for the lines, and our lines should be very, very light. I will be doing my lines a little bit darker than they really should be because I want you to be able to see them on the screen. But the lighter you can do your lines, the happier you will be because there are many lines you're going to erase. So let's start with a dot in the middle. Again, my dot is too big and too dark. You're just going to do a small dot that you're able to see. That's your perspective point. You're not going to erase it. Next, I'm going to use my ruler and I'm going to go from the dot to the corner. And I'm going to just slide that a little bit so you can see. I want to take a second to line it up right into the corner. Just like that. Again, mine is too dark, but yours will be lighter. Next, I'm going to go from the dot to the other upper corner. And the same thing in the bottom corners. And that is going to be, it's going to create our walls. Bottom corner dot into the corner. So you end up with what looks like a bit of a wonky X, and everybody's X looks different because it depends on where your perspective dot is. I wanted to pause for a second and show you what we're kind of working towards. This is a finished one. So what we just made is, you can kind of see where the X is. We've got to create that back wall now. So here we go. We're going to go on to this line and we're going to put a dot about in the middle, a little bit closer to the center than to the other side. So maybe it's more like a third of the way up. So if I think of this into thirds, like 1, 2, 3, I'm doing it the third. I'm just putting a dot. That dot is going to be where I start my back wall. So I'm going to line my ruler up. And one thing I accidentally often do is make these lines, they're straight, but they're diagonal. I don't want them to be diagonal. I want them to be perfectly parallel to the top and bottom. So here's a trick. Line your ruler up with the side of the paper and then make your line from that dot over to that next line like that. That ensures that it is completely parallel. I'm gonna follow where I stopped. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm lining my ruler up there. Gonna go down here like that. And then I just keep going around kind of like a follow the leader situation to make the back wall. In a second, we're gonna do some erasing. Last one. And you're gonna see why my lines are too dark and your lines will be better because you've done them lightly. We're going to erase the lines we don't need, and the lines we don't need are these lines. I'm not erasing my dot, I'm keeping it because I'm going to need it for the rest of my piece. But I can erase this, and then you instantly already start to see that it looks like a wall that is receding into the background. Remember, one-point perspective is just an optical illusion. It makes it look like you can walk into a room, that a room has a depth. We're now gonna go to this side to work on our bed. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go on this line and we're going to go about 2/3 of the way down. So again, everybody's line is different because it depends on where your middle point is. But if I break this down into like 1/3, 2/3, a whole, I'm gonna go about 2/3 of the way down. I'm just doing a dot. Again, mine is too large and too dark, yours will be less so. I'm gonna use my ruler trick again. I'm going to line it up with the side of the paper, and right where that dot is, I'm just going to have a straight line that goes out almost to my perspective point line, but not quite. Okay. Next, I'm going to go up to this wall, and I'm going to make what will eventually become the backboard of the bed. So I'm going to think about how far up I want that. I'm going to make just a dot again right there, and then I'm going to use my ruler, and I'm going to once again use the side of my paper to make that perfectly straight line. I'm just going to go out. Again, everyone's will be a different amount, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to go so close to your perspective point because this is the width of your bed, right? And you want to be able to have a middle space. So you want to kind of judge, like, how far am I going to go out? Well, if I stop here, then I still have a little bit of space. So that'll work for me. I'm going to close that up with my ruler so that what I've created is just a rectangle. So it's going to look something like that. Now I have to close off this because what I'm really making is the mattress, right? I'm making a rectangular sphere. And so I'm going to need to do this with the perspective point. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm lining it up with my dot, and I'm lining it up with the bottom of that rectangle I just made, and I'm going to close this just like that. So let me lay that down again so you can see it. So it's my dot on the bottom of my bed, closing it like that. So I can see now that my line is too long. I can go ahead and erase that because I'm not going to need it. Okay. Now we are going to make the posts of the bed. So I'm going to go over to that first dot I made, and I'm just going to make a vertical line. I don't need my dot. I'm going to go from that dot maybe about an inch up. Again, we can always erase if it's too much. I'm going to go into this corner and do the same thing. Again, you want these lines to be very vertical. They should be parallel to the side of the paper. Next, I'm going to line up the perspective point to close this up. So I'm lining it up with the ruler on top of that post I just made and the top of my bed up there. Let me show you what that looks like. Let me pull it away. So I'm just kind of lining it up, and you have some wiggle room there. Like you can kind of slide it to get it to where you want. But the most important thing is that you have to have it lined up with that dot. That's going to give you the correct proportion. I'm just going to close that just like that. Okay, and then I'm going to come over onto this side and do the same thing. And again, I'm going to eyeball this a little bit because it's okay if this line's too long. I kind of want it to be similar width to this one, so I'm kind of sliding it. I'm going to do just like that. So I've got my dot, I'm lining it up here. I'm going to close that up. And so see, my line was a little too long, so I'll just erase that. Now I need to close from here to here, and this is just a straight line. I don't need my dot for that. I'm just going to use the side of my paper like I've been doing. And I'm going to close that. And then I'm going to do the same at the top. Okay. Now I have a bunch of lines in here that I don't need because remember, this is a solid object. It's our mattress. So I would not see the lines that are inside anymore. Those would all be gone. And so what I'm left with is a mattress has some form and a headboard. You're going to turn that into a bed. We won't worry about that now. You're going to add the details later. But one thing you can keep in mind is some little tricks we talked about, which were if you want to make it appear that there's room underneath your bed, you can do this little super simple trick. A curved line could also be a straight line. And then you just erase that and erase that. Right? So it makes it look like there's space underneath. Let's say you want some pillows here because it's going to be your bed. If I do that, those I'm not going to use a ruler for, right? Because pillows are kind of fluffy. And then I would erase these lines, right? Because I just want it to look like it's kind of fluffy in here. This headboard could be straight. You could also make it become rounded. If so, I would erase this. Endless options on what you can do, but you'll worry about that later. First, let's go over, and we're going to do this piece of furniture here. This piece of furniture can be whatever you want. It could be a bed, or sorry, not a bed. It could be a dresser. It could be a desk. It can be a vanity, whatever you want. But here are the steps to make it. I'm going to go on that line just like I did with my bed, and I'm going to mark how far I think it's going to come out. So I'm going to say maybe about this far. Up here, we're going to do the same thing we did with the bed, which is that I'm going to put a dot here to mark how high my piece of furniture is. Again, though, one thing you want to keep in mind, this is your perspective, like imaginary line going across. You want that piece of furniture to be well below that dot. So I'm going to put a dot here so that I have quite a bit of space in order for there to be the illusion that it has form. I'm going to take that dot and I'm going to go right on top of it, and I'm going to do a straight line over again. I don't want this to go too close to the middle of my room. I need there to be some space. So let me show you again. I want there to be this open space. So I'm just stopping right about there because I know my dot is there and I have that space. I'm going to close that up. So I made kind of just another little rectangle. And then I'm going to come down to that dot that I just made. And I'm going to do just like our bed. I'm going to go straight out and stop. I've got to go a little bit past there. And then I'm going to use my dot to close up that area. So dot, bottom, close. Okay, this line's too long, so I'm going to erase it. Now I'm going to come over to this dot, and this is just going to be a straight vertical line up, almost to wherever the top of my dresser or whatever it is. So I went up there, I'm kind of estimating it's about there. I need to close this, but you can see if I just make that a straight line, that's gonna throw the illusion. So you know that's got to be a line that's from the perspective point. So I'm gonna line this up with this dot and this dot to get an angle. And then I know that's too long, okay? This corner down here is just going to get a straight line up, almost to the top, but not quite. And what you'll know is that this and this, that's where you're connecting it. So like I can already tell you, oops, I think I just shook the camera, sorry about that. I made mine too long, but I can fix it. So I'm gonna go from that corner just over to my line, stop. And so I can see that I made that a little bit too long. Now I've got to close up this part. And so I'm going to use my perspective point and I'm going to line up those two and I'm just going to close up the front just like that. So now, just like the bed, I have a bunch of lines that shouldn't be there. So I've got to get rid of this and this and this. And one thing that always kind of tricked me when I would look at this is that I'm looking at this paper head on. So I'd be sort of thinking, well, this is the front, but this is not the front. This is the side of the dresser or desk. This is the front. So let's say you want to put some drawers. You need to stay on the perspective, meaning you can't just draw a straight line. So let's say I want to put a drawer in there. I'm going to use the point and I'm going to line that up just as I did before and draw line like that. And then maybe I'm going to put some handles because I want the drawers to come up, something like that. For details, you're going to create your room however you want it. Anything that's on this back wall, like right here, there is no perspective line because that's the thing you're looking at straight on. So this is not involving that dot. This is just draw it straight on. Everything that's on the side has to be from the perspective point. So let's say you want on one of these two walls, you want either a mirror or a frame or a poster. You can't just draw a square. You have to draw it from the dot. So what I mean by that is I'm lining it up with the ruler, coming over here. The top is from there. The bottom is from there. And then the sides are just going to be straight. Again, this is where I tend to like accidentally make things diagonal. So I'm going to line up the top of my paper, scooch that down. Same thing over here. And again, this could be a window. It could be a poster. I could, if I wanted to make like, maybe I'm making it a window. So maybe if I'm doing that, I'm having a frame. Like a window would have a frame all the way around it. So I'm kind of making it like double whammy. This is, again, a project where, unlike any other we really do, I really recommend you use a ruler because you will be much happier with the end product if the lines are straight. So that's something. And then maybe if I wanted to put some kind of curtain or shade or whatever, you could do that. You know, and this friend did a poster. Another example I have here. Like looks like this. So one thing on this, you'll notice this person did a mirror. Again, they were following the perspective line, so they've got to keep it at that same angle. You get to add whatever details, of course, you want. You will then Sharpie it with a fine tip, and we're using colored pencils. You can see how these artists did a really good job of using the colored pencils, either very bright or lighter to create texture like in wood. I told your class another observation I've made over the years is that it's sort of gives the illusion more of a room you're walking into when the walls are colored, but the ceiling remains white. So that's something to think about. You can do a light up there, all kinds of options. I hope this helps. Again, I would recommend watching this and then just pausing it when you need for me to slow down. Okay, thanks. Good luck.